When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah, Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment.
Hey, I've been on reckless abandon, ain't got shit to lose. I've been lost inside a dream, I probably hit the snooze. I didn't ease that label, still I gotta keep it cool. Leaving text on red, make sure my pockets green and blue. Then I put green on their heads, I call them Beetlejuice. Seen them on the evening news, kill them when I needed room. You think she a tight, she begging me to beat it loose. She's in red like Pikachu, every time I Pikachu. Shoot her up, guess I'm sliding. Left a nigga home, well phone, it's on silent. Started mess my fly in the clouds, we resided. Then I took her home, made her sing like a siren. She came straight out in erotic novel. She riding, she swallow you out of a bottle. She just wanna see me whining and grovel. She fly like a model, she bow, I say bravo, baby.
When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah, Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment. I told her we don't gotta label it anything, but I think you know. If the sky above you was cloudy, then I would paint it blue. I know her ex-man tripping out like he ate the shrooms. I gave that man a memorial like from May to June. I get way too petty when I'm off the shit, so I hope these motherfuckers don't cross me again. The only L I see is in my love for revenge. Motherfucker student loan debt and paying rent. I was on Santee Alley when the streaming check came in. Had to buy my baby Sapphire birthstone gems in the Prius bumping Thames. I told her when I pop I'm really buying her a Benz. I know love don't cost a thing, but I want to spoil you rotten like I left out some old food. R.I.P. the OB need a headstone, blocking everybody else out like noise canceling headphones. When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah, Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment. Yeah. Let's go.
Hey, I'm Tim Donaghy, and you're listening to the Advantage Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Advantage. I'm your host, Michael Fiddle. Today is Tuesday, August 13th, and on today's podcast, we are going to break down the return to WNBA action slate that happens on Thursday, August 15th. We just got odds for Friday, August 16th WNBA action about a half hour ago, so maybe we can start to break down some of those games and talk about those opening lines as well. And of course, we're going to take a few minutes to reminisce on our Olympic break and some of what we were watching and talk about the Olympic men's basketball, because that was an incredible tournament, a lot of fun, definitely things to project forward to future years. So Drew and I actually haven't chatted much for men's basketball, so we're going to use this as a forum to do so. But before we get started, let me remind everyone, please rate, review, subscribe on wherever you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching on live X or YouTube right now, please hit the thumbs up. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, because we are going to start building out our YouTube channel. And if you like that little intro song, make sure you listen to yesterday's podcast with the artist, Connor Massara, who came and did an interview. We talked Cleveland sports. We talked about music. We debuted that song off his recent album, which is going to be the theme song for The Advantage moving forward. It's called Crowded by Connor Massara. And then lastly, and then we're going to start talking. Check out recoveryforathletes.com, the sponsor of this podcast, the #1 online retailer for all your home recovery equipment needs. Do you want a home sauna? Do you want a home ice bath? Do you just need a Theragun? You go to recoveryforathletes.com, use code THEADVANTAGE for a discount off your order. All right. A 4.5-minute intro before we fucking started talking. Drew, how are you doing, my man? How was your Olympic break? And where would you like to start this conversation?
First of all, song is fire. Immediately going on the playlist, like 100%. I was jamming out for the first 2 minutes of this. First starting the podcast every time. That's a good way to get the energy up, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Secondly, really enjoyed the time off. Didn't really do a ton of betting. Did a couple of plays here and there on some MLB stuff. Made a bunch of plays on Olympic basketball, which turned out well for me. And just on the men's side, though, didn't really pay attention to the women's side, and I'm actually kind of regretting that, especially considering how the final game went. Having seen some highlights there, it was one I'm sorry I missed for sure. So yeah, good overall break. Played a lot of poker, which has been going well, so that's always nice as well.
Can I ask you? You're Canadian, right? You
Yes,
live
sir.
in where? Montreal or Toronto? You're Montreal.
Near Toronto, very
You're
close to Toronto.
My bad. All right.
Yeah.
So as a Canadian watching the Olympics, you're also a big WNBA fan and a massive NBA fan.
Yeah.
How are your rooting interests intertwined with the storylines, with what you're rooting for, with not being an American, but being a big WNBA fan? Like, how do you watch? Are you rooting for Team Canada all the way? Are you rooting for seeing LeBron and Steph and KD do their thing? You're rooting for France and just like, let's just see this Wembanyama freak show happen now. Like, what was your rooting interest as a Canadian watching this basketball tournament?
Well, first of all, I really thought that Canada was going to do considerably better in the tournament. I thought we had a good team. They just didn't quite perform against the size of France. It was a real issue. That was one of the games I called wrong. I had Canada in that game, and I definitely took an L in two ways on that, obviously monetarily, and then I was obviously gutted that we didn't even get into the medal rounds. After that, I just really enjoyed how good the basketball was. Like, honestly, I think the rules of FIBA are just probably better certainly for one-off games than the NBA rules right now. Every game was really good, even the US games, right? Like everybody consistently thought that the US was just going to run away. The lines were always really, really bloated towards them. And I made a bunch of money just taking the points against them because they had a tough time, especially in the earlier games, transitioning to this style of basketball, whereas the other teams were used to it, and it showed in the scores. I really liked seeing France do as well as they did on home soil. I was rooting a little for the Wembanyama show, but I did think that the U.S. were probably just going to put their foot down and get that gold medal game. I did take the France points because I thought 16.5 was a bit egregious, so I made a little money there. But I thought I had hoped that game would be a little closer.
The finals.
Yeah.
I knew the finals was going to be a smackdown. I actually was surprised France ended up covering the spread. They also covered the first half spread, which was a nice sharp spot to get. I think it opened 7.5, closed 8.5. If you didn't get the 7.5 or the 8, they're up 10 with 2 seconds left. And one of the French guys who had an amazing game and showed out, the guy Yabasoul. I don't want to pronounce French names on the podcast to make a fool out of myself. He gets a layup and makes it an 8-point first half and ends up, a ball breaker on anyone who played late into the steam of following that minus 8.5. But overall, like, my thoughts on this tournament, Drew, I love, like, Team USA is by far my favorite basketball team. I am so invested in the NBA, in NBA players, in NBA gambling, in profiting off these situations. So I don't really have a team that I root for on a nightly basis. So I don't really have a rooting interest if I don't even have a bet. I'm just like looking for the next angle to play into, looking for, is someone going to get dinged up? Is there going to be a back-to-back? Is there going to be a tough travel spot coming? How are they going to use their rotations? It's all betting related, even though I love the game. Team USA, I put my betting behind me because there's not really the best gambling metrics out there. We were not getting opening line spreads posted right after the game. They were taking 24 to 36 hours after one game was and before the next game, right? So if there was 3 days between the two games, it would come out like at the middle point or even just 24 hours before the second game. So we didn't have the market information. We didn't have things like betting splits, which meh, in how useful they are, but they weren't really readily available. We didn't have a lot of prop data to work with. There was not a lot of over unders. It was a lot of those, is so-and-so going to have 20 or more? And you calculate market hold with those things. You can't understand movement in a lot of those directions. So if you can't calculate a hold and understand the movement in respect to the hold, how are you really going to truly bet it? So I didn't really bet it, but I fucking loved it in terms of watching LeBron, because my dog is named LeBron. Bronny.
Hi, Bronny.
And I've been so adamant over the last year with Gibby and Austin on this podcast. I'm sure you've heard the episodes in times that you've listened to it, where they think Tatum is better than LeBron James. They had already let Tatum pass LeBron James on the rankings, and I have been screaming at them for this very topic for maybe 2 years, going back to Tatum rolling his ankle against the Miami Heat, Game 7 in Boston after going down 3-0 to the Miami Heat. Then they come back and make it a 3-3 series. You remember that 2 years ago? I was so adamant. If LeBron was on your team instead of Tatum right now, you wouldn't be down 3-0. You wouldn't have the King rolling his ankle. You would be in the NBA Finals, and then come on to this, and maybe you would have even beaten Steph and the Warriors in the previous NBA Finals. Then you come to the 24 NBA Finals against Luka and co. And I don't think LeBron and Tatum is going to be the difference there. So I've always been so adamant that give me LeBron James over Jason Tatum. And then we get to this Olympic basketball run where that's probably the loudest storyline of them all, is that Tatum's not really playing and the LeBron is the absolute star of the team. How did you feel, Drew, about LeBron getting the MVP? Did you feel like it should have been Steph's?
No, I thought it was LeBron's for sure. He basically is still the best single game player on the planet. If you need a game one, if the aliens show up tomorrow and we need to hire everybody Space Jam style, LeBron is pick one. And if he's not, you're crazy.
Wait.
Other than Jokic, maybe.
Luka?
I would take LeBron. You're just, because
Giannis,
as good as Luka is, I think for a 40-minute game, are we playing FIBA rules? Because I actually think FIBA rules really favor older players. The fact that
it's a 40-minute game in that sense, but Luka also kind of developed in the FIBA system, so
that's true,
and he's unbelievable.
Yeah, and we also didn't see him, right?
Right. Yeah, Slovenia didn't really have enough snuff around him. What about Giannis? Would you take Giannis over LeBron in a single game?
Who else is on the team? Because
right? Can I pause this right now? Can I say this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for making that point, Drew. You set me up to explain that, and going back to the Tatum stuff, Tatum might be the 8th, 9th, maybe 10th best player in the league. Maybe you say Ant's better than him. Maybe you say, I don't really care. It's not that important. Tatum probably comes around 7, 8, 9-ish.
Yeah.
But if he has players 1 through 6 already existing on his team, he does not become the 7th guy that you'd want on your team. If you already have LeBron James, if you already have SGA, if you already have Luka Doncic, then suddenly you'd want Anthony Davis instead of Jason Tatum, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I see your point. That was the issue.
Is he really the 7th best in the NBA, or is he the 7th best first player? But not I don't know how to rationalize those rankings, because only one of the top 5 players usually wins in the NBA, right? I mean, Tatum did it this year. Maybe that's the outlier. Mm-hmm. But Luka was right there. Jokic is always right there. LeBron was right there in last year's Western Conference Finals. So generally, it's one of the top 5 players in NBA historically wins the title. And then it becomes which best compliments do you have? So if Tatum is just outside that top 5 in terms of 1A guys you'd want on your team, and then isn't the best number 2 guy you'd want on a team, which showed in terms of him not filling a role that was, sufficient to play complement to some of these other players. That's not his game. He is a lead ball handler. He is an initiator. He is a playmaker. He's incredible. But he's not LeBron James, and therefore he's
and
not also.
Kevin
And then he's
Durant.
not the best complement to LeBron James, right?
Yeah.
He's not a Dwayne Wade, and he's not an Anthony Davis.
No. And like the key is his shot is just not on the same level as other shooters that the US has. And that like LeBron is always going to be able to utilize a shooter on offense better than he can anything else, because he's going to find that guy on whenever he's open. And if you're knocking down 30% of your threes, but you're like great on defense, well, I'd rather have somebody who can knock down 45% of their threes and be 75% as good as you on defense. That's going to change the whole offensive equation, right?
Tatum was 0 for 16 on shots outside the paint from the exhibition games through the finals. His shot abandoned him. He's a great shooter. His shot abandoned him for this 10-game stretch, and it did in the NBA Finals a little bit too. So he's going through a little bit of a shooting slump. It happens to the best of them. But yeah, for this particular 6-game set where you have 3 group stage games and then 3 elimination games and 2 medal stage games, like that's what it was. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I was beating my chest because it was finally the moment where I dunked on my friends that LeBron is better than Tatum, and they had to text me back going, yeah, you're right. All right. Whose legacy was more positively impacted, LeBron, Curry, or KD? Drew, we'll send that to you first. That is a question from Adam. Adam is actually the CEO of Recovery for Athletes, the sponsor of this podcast. So go check out one more time. Go check out Recovery for Athletes. If you need a hot tub, a Theragun, some protein powder, some weights, I don't know what you need, but you need to make yourself in better shape somehow. You check out recoveryforathletes.com. You use code THEADVANTAGE for a discount off your order. And Drew, whose legacy was most positively impacted?
I think this is a really tough question because I think it's close. And I'm actually going to say...
Should we do it 3, 2, 1 and then do it together? Okay, I was going to do Curry too.
Say Curry. Yeah. I think Curry's, but I think that it's only because Curry's legacy has more to gain. I think LeBron and Curry probably had a very similar Olympics, but because LeBron's career and legacy is already like completely cemented, like he's 1B is what everybody's gonna say. Personally, I say like it's Jordan first, and then by the slimmest of margins, it's LeBron.
How old are you?
Maybe not super slim, but like just career-wise.
How old are you, Drew?
I'm 37-ish soon.
So you were a basketball fan to observe MJ's career? Parts of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like over the sort of the 12-year MJ stretch, he was the best there ever was. I'm just saying that LeBron has done it. LeBron's going to end up doing this for 25 years.
Right. So I don't ever get involved in the MJ LeBron debate, and I won't even right now because I'm 32. I was not old enough to watch LeBron James versus Michael. Like I know they never played. Like I've watched all of LeBron's career. I was not able to watch Michael Jordan's career. When he was winning his three-peats, I was 2, 3, 4 years old. When he was doing it again, and when he came back from the White Sox, I was 6, 7, 8. Like I remember parts of it. I remember Michael and Scotty. I remember talks about Dennis Rodman. I remember the whole Phil Jackson. I know the intro song of the Bulls arena starting where they're going through the Windy City and they're doing that electric music. I'm aware of all those things as a basketball fan. I didn't know basketball like I did to then come to a judgment on who was better. Let's go back to this in terms of the Curry, LeBron, KD. LeBron, in some people's minds, like there was talk, I don't know how much of it's Twitter banter versus reality. There was talk of, is LeBron now the greatest from this run?
No.
Sure, I'm just saying there was talk.
Okay.
Like people said it. Curry never had a Team USA experience before, ends up going nuclear in the semifinals and the finals, to which I sent a text to somebody else, pretty sharp professional sports gambler, and I said, in terms of all-time rankings, does this now push Curry above KD for anyone who had it the other way prior? I always had KD as being better than Curry, even though Curry has more rings. I think he has more MVPs. I always said when they were together, Durant was clearly the better player. Durant's clearly the better basketball player throughout the course of his career. Does this now put Curry above KD because he does have the more MVPs? He does have the more rings, and now he comes to the Olympic realm where Kevin Durant's the all-time leading Olympic scorer. That's the notch that KD's legacy got this round of the Olympics. And Curry just goes crazy in the semifinals and the finals and ends up taking home the gold. So I just thought, all of their legacies skyrocketed in this one to the point where I won't rule any of them out for 2028 LA. And my hope and dream would be that they play in the 3-on-3 tournament together, but I know they can't because of the FIBA, because of the rules and regulations around that. But just fucking imagine LeBron, Curry, KD on that 3-on-3 tournament. All right, Drew, let's start getting into some WNBA stuff. We are going to talk about the Thursday, August 15th games. We're going to go over a little bit of the Friday, August 16th games because those lines did just get posted. We're starting off with the Mystics taking on the Minnesota Lynx in Minnesota. Lynx opened as a 10.5-point favorite. Stayed right around there. There's 10s, there's 10.5 still in the market. The big thing here, Drew, is that Napheesa Collier should be coming back for the Lynx. She missed a bunch of their games prior to the Olympic break with plantar fasciitis. Let me properly explain to anyone listening to this. We're talking about Justin Herbert for the Chargers, and everyone keeps saying he's dealing with plantar fascia. He's dealing with plantar fascia. No, he's not. We all have a plantar fascia, but itis, when people say, oh, I got the itis, that's inflammation. That's swelling. So he has plantar fasciitis, which is inflammation of the plantar fascia, which is what Justin Herbert's currently dealing with, which is what Napheesa Collier, my girl Fee, is coming off of. Before the Olympic break, she was dealing with the plantar fasciitis. She started for Team USA in the Olympics, so we should expect her to return to action for the Lynx in this game. She is like a borderline MVP candidate in the WNBA. She's amongst the best players in the league. So this is a big deal that her return comes. Let's just start with this game, Drew. I played the under in this Lynx Mystics game. The number that I got was 156.5. It's down to 155.5 consensus now. Spread, I said, is 10.5. Where are your reads for this game?
I'm staying away from this one entirely, actually. This is probably the one game I won't bet. I want to see what the Lynx look like coming back before I'm ready to lay 10.5. And I don't think you can play the points the other direction, though, because Washington has just been bad. And with the rest angle, I think your underplay is good. I'm by default leaning on unders right now. I expect heavy defense coming back from the break. I expect, we're coming into the stretch run. Everybody's going to be hyped up and ready to give it their best to finish out the season. And I expect more unders than anything else going forward. But 10.5 is just, I think it's a pretty sharp line, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to avoid this one. I'll watch it though.
So I think 10.5 is the right line. It's the direction that I would look because exactly what we're talking about. You're reintegrating a star player. The Lynx are an amazing 3-point shooting team. They're also an amazing defensive team, right? So when you're reintegrating a new piece on offense, I do think the defense is kind of a more you have a more offensive adjustment than defensive. You kind of just know what you're doing. You get back into your rotations. It's basketball. Same way in football. In a lot of these training camps right now, you hear about offenses struggling. That's because they need to get in sync and defenders like come ready. So it's easier to show up to training camp day one. It's easier to show up from a long break day one. That's why we play college football week 0 unders. That's why we play early NBA game unders. That's why we play like return from break WNBA. You're seeing this game go under. You're seeing the Mercury Sky game trend under and the Liberty Sparks game trend under. They're all trending under because of this return to action. Is it a little bit slower pace? Are some of the shots missing? Is there a few extra turnovers? Like that's some of the things that we're dealing with right now. So I'm looking Mystics plus 10.5. I'm not going to play it. That would be the direction that I would quote unquote lean. I hate the term lean, Drew, because lean just means I don't know what the fuck it means. What I'm saying is this is my betting advice. I'm not betting it. So I don't lean anywhere. I lean, don't bet it. Like that's the act.
One thing I'll mention about
smart
this
money. Let's say I think smart money's on the Mystics, but I don't want to follow it. Is that the right way to phrase it?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm also just looking through the props at the moment, and Dolson's over under. We've talked about her before. Is currently at 8.5 on the points. One of the things to watch is injuries. So I have been trying to look through some of the reports on injuries throughout, because we've had such a long break that some of these players who were out before the break might be back. In this case, Collier is on her way back this game. So I'm wondering if Shakira for the Mystics is actually going to come back and play, because if she's not, that's an easy over on Dolson. Like, not that it'll always hit, but like I would absolutely be playing that. It's currently at FanDuel minus 120. I would take that if you can get a line on whether Shakira is playing or not.
So Shakira Austin, her coach, Eric Thibault, said on Saturday that she practiced daily with the team and is ramping up to return after the Olympic break.
Is that right away? She should be active.
Yeah, if she's been practicing
I want to make sure that she's active. And even then, is she playing 10 minutes? Is she playing 25 minutes? Like, Dolson has been good in general for this team since Shakira went out. They won a couple of games because of her spacing the floor. Is the coach going to lean on that some more? Right. So that's something to watch for sure.
All right, let's talk about the Mercury facing the Chicago Sky. This is the front end of a back-to-back for the Mercury. They're going Chicago Sky on Thursday and then to the Indiana Fever on Friday. It's definitely a short road trip, but back-to-backs in the WNBA are a bit rare. And the Mercury did have 2 players on this break playing in the Olympics, in both Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi. Now, Taurasi, I didn't really watch much of the Olympic women's, but apparently Taurasi was really struggling. I don't know how much that holds coming back to the W, because she's just like, she's the LeBron of, it's like as if LeBron would had a tough Olympics. How would we project him coming back to the NBA?
Yeah.
I think she'll be okay. I played Mercury minus 2.5. It is still there at MGM at minus 120. You're paying some juice for it. There's minus 3 for minus 110 at DraftKings. Drew, on the other side, the Sky, something that I'm fading right here is their recent trade of Mabry right before the break, right? They trade Mabry. She's a really good wing player for their team. She's a starter for their team. It felt more. They trade her to the Connecticut Sun, who are a potential title team. I don't think this brings them up enough into title contention, but that'll be a story for another day. Is this a tank move a little bit for the Chicago Sky and Angel Reese's team to get better draft position for incoming talent next year? Like, how were you reading this Sky versus Mercury game? I thought, hey, let's pick up Mercury first game back. Griner and DT probably going to be out there. Maybe they sit the second night of the back-to-back against Caitlin Clark and the Fever, and the Chicago Sky might be entering tank now. So I'll play the minus 2.5. I'd even play the minus 3.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. I don't have much to add, to be honest with you. I would take them. The line is still climbing. It is now minus 3.5, minus 106 at FanDuel.
Yep.
So obviously taking a 2.5, taking a 3 anywhere else is probably a good bet at this point. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the Phoenix Mercury realized that this is probably, of the two games, if they have to get one, it's got to be this one. They have still had a break since the Olympics. Like, it's been 5-6 days for some of these, for most of everybody just resting. So I think everybody plays this game. I think the Mercury just have more size, more experience, more talent to get this one against the Sky. And the Sky have been bad at home.
So let me ask you about the total in this game, Drew, because prior to the break, the Mercury were a team that we were targeting for overs, correct? Like, they were starting to play pace up basketball, and like, despite having Griner and potentially one of the best interior defenders in the W, they were not playing defense. Like, they were getting burnt up and down the court. It was fast break, layup line central, and their games were insanely high scoring. So it was constantly look towards the overs in Mercury games. Here we have the total opening at 166.5, 166 now. It's being movement towards the under. I'd say it's a pretty sharp under in terms of the teams that are playing and the early movement and some of the splits. I'm terrified to play into this under. We talked about this being an under situation, return to action, but we have a really over team. Is there any play on this total? Are you willing to play? And for me, it's under or nothing, but I'm terrified of it.
I'm not terrified of it. I think that the Sky are going to put up a fight, right? Like, Angel Reese is just not going to take it lying down.
The Sky are just so inefficient. And if they're missing Mabry, who's like a 3-point, spacer and someone who drives efficiency, then I really think this is fading the Sky's ability to score, which makes me feel more confident in my Mercury against the spread. And then just like leave the total alone. Because the indications from the total that I'm getting are that the Sky can't score. And that we're also getting that indication, the spread movement. So since I already got a good spread number, let me just keep that. And that's what I'm at.
Yeah, you could add on either side of this, right? Like, you could, if you wanted to play the under, you could add half a unit or 0.25 of your unit back on the Phoenix Mercury.
Right.
And I think that Mercury play is probably the sharper of the two lines, right? Like it's like you said. So if you want to mitigate some risk and just take an under or something like that, you can spread it between the two. But you probably want to go 3/4 over on the spread and then maybe 1/4 on the under.
Last game that we have on Thursday is the New York Liberty at the LA Sparks. It seems like the Sparks plus 12 is the quote unquote correct side to be on. I will not be on that side. I love the Liberty. I think they're a fantastic team. They do have trouble in second quarters. They do have trouble covering longer spreads. And they do have a handful of players that just played in the Team USA for the Olympics. Now they're in LA on the road. And of course, going from the Olympics in Paris to LA, as someone that lives on the West Coast, that is a fucking trek. So huge travel spot for the Liberty, which I would assume is the reason why it's a Sparks sharp spot. I don't think the Sparks are very good at all. I mean, they're plus 12 underdog at home with their, star rookie injured for the year with an ACL injury. Is there any action that you have on this game? I grabbed the under when it was at 168.5. It's all the way down to 165.5 now. I'm at the point where I'm considering playback. I could never recommend still playing an under once it's already moved 3 points. So now I'm at do I play some of this back or let it ride? Drew, talk to me about this Sparks Liberty game.
First of all, I'd let that ride at 168.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I will.
Secondly, I'm taking the Sparks. The Sparks have been
they've been tough. They've been playing with a lot of
especially at home. They've made a lot of good teams work for their wins.
Yeah.
And it's working.
All them
out.
South Sudan.
Yeah. It's really working out for them well because they're gaining a lot of experience. Yes, they're losing, right? But they're right in there every game, and they can take some pride and some teaching elements from that moving forward, right? The other thing is, like you said, a lot of the Liberty players were over in Paris, and that is, what's the time difference? It's 8 hours? Is it 9 hours coming all the way over to the West Coast? Because I think it was 5 or 6 hours for me. So
So then
adding
it'd be
3.
another 3.
Yeah,
I
right?
honestly, I should know the answer to that question. I don't, because I mean I could do a quick Google. Because I was just honestly just getting all of the updates for the Olympic Games in Pacific time. So I just knew what to
Yeah.
do Pacific time
Yeah,
without having
exactly.
to check what it was in Paris locally.
So if you think about this, the old saying is that it
9
takes a
hours.
day per hour to get rid of jet lag, right?
Wow.
So we're talking about like,
They needed a week.
yeah, like they didn't get it. Like it. So I think the under is a really good play, especially when it's that high up at the 170 mark. 2, the rest for the New York Liberty is going to be vastly mismatched against this LA Sparks. Like the Sparks have been sitting at home for 2 weeks. They're itching to play.
Preparing for this specific game.
Exactly.
Like Sabrina's preparing for France, preparing for her next situation. Brianna Stewart's preparing for France.
Like, how many games over the course of the season are you going to get 2 weeks of prep for? And this is the New York Liberty. Like this win this game, and it might be the defining win of your season.
Yeah, ignite your whole second half of the season.
Absolutely. And they've already been playing well and covering spreads like crazy lately. This was a team I was leaning on before the break. This is a team I'll continue to lean on after the break until they show me that I need to change my mind on that.
Are you taking a stab at the plus 550 money line at all?
No. I like, even if they keep it close, just the talent difference on the New York Liberty, you never know. They could just hit an easy shot or a shot to win it down the stretch. I could see that happening. It's going to take an enormous effort, and I don't think plus 550 is enough, really. You probably want like plus 600, plus 650 before you start looking at that kind of stuff.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm out. Okay, let's go to Friday. That wrapped us up for Thursday's game, Drew. So I'm on the Lynx under.
Sorry, I just want to mention one other thing.
Do you have a prop or something?
For props, I was thinking about just leaning on a bunch of the unders for anyone who played in the Olympics. Okay. Because the defense level from the players who didn't play in the Olympics is going to be ratcheted up. We just know that based on trends, right?
Yep.
So following breaks, we've talked about that. So without the rest, with the time zone difference, with all the travel that just happened, and the fact that you just won an Olympic gold medal potentially, or whatever medal you got, or and the experience,
the high going from Olympic gold medal and the celebration and the jet lag and the travel and all of that situation juxtaposed with, hey, you got to play the Sparks on Thursday, August 15th.
Yeah,
it's your 23rd game of your WNBA season. You're already in first place in your conference. This is a trap spot for the Liberty. So are you looking Sabrina's under?
Exactly.
Under.
I'm looking at
John
Brianna
on Team USA.
Like Brianna's expected to still get 20 points in this game. Like, I could see her 15 and be good, right?
Who?
20's high. Same with Sabrina. Like, Sabrina's under is at 20 and a half minus 106. Like, I'm taking that right now.
I like it. I do like it. I mean, I hate fading Sabrina because she's fucking unbelievable.
Oh, she's amazing
at ball.
But if there's ever a spot, right?
I do think she'll win an MVP in the league, and I think I'll start attacking Sabrina long shots in future years. She's incredible. What about what's Brianna Stewart's? Did you say?
She's also at 20 and a half, but I think the juice is higher.
That's more of the one that I would look at for this particular game.
The juice is minus 130 though.
I'd play one or the other. I definitely wouldn't play both, but that's the direction that I would still look in this game because she's also old. I mean, she's not old, but she's older than Sabrina with the travel component. And I think she's played in multiple Olympics before. All right, let's go to. Are we good to go to Fridays?
For the record, Sabrina's not even averaging 20 points a game this season, and all of these other factors are so like her
maybe we play them both.
Yeah, like I think that's a good angle. Whether it hits or not is to be seen, but I it's just where I'm gonna put my money.
Right? Will that be 19.5 by tip off? Will that be minus 120 by tip off? If either of those questions are yes, regardless of the results post tip off, the answer is yes. You place the bet now. All right. To wrap up Thursday's slates, we're sharp indications are Mystics, Mercury, and Sparks against the spread, and unders on all of the games. I personally am on the Lynx Mystics under, the Mercury against the spread, and the Liberty Sparks under. Drew, do you just want to quickly reiterate what props you're definitely on, or which sides you're definitely on for Thursday?
I'm definitely taking Sabrina, and definitely Sabrina's under at minus 106. I'm going to look for other spots in the games. Don't forget that Dolson spot and the Mystics Lynx. I'm definitely taking the Sparks currently plus 11.5. And I'm also putting money on the Mercury against the spread and a quarter unit on the under or something of that to that nature.
Okay, great. Let's go over to Friday, August 16th, where we have the Seattle Storm taking on the Dream, the Mercury on that second leg of the back-to-back against Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. Already real sharp indications on the Fever for that spot. I want to talk about that. And then Connecticut Sun against the Dallas Wings. Tough travel spot for the Sun and some of those players that were on. Alyssa Thomas was definitely on Team USA. I don't think Bonner was just an all-star. She wasn't on Team USA. So I think only Alyssa Thomas from the Sun was on Team USA, but start player making a tough travel spot towards the Wings. I haven't, again, these lines opened right as we were starting, Drew, so I haven't like overly seen tons of movement in the market in any of these spots. I haven't seen tons of like red flags showing up. The only one that maybe is worth starting with is that Fever versus Mercury. Fever opened -1, and they're already out to -3, -3.5 at places. To me, this is just an indicator that Griner and Taurasi might sit the second leg of a road back-to-back right off the Olympic break. I think they're just fading the projected injury news more so than thinking like if everyone plays, then Fever are a true sharp side versus the Mercury. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sorry.
I do think the Fever also beat the Mercury in their last game too. Like I think Caitlin Clark had a pretty impressive run. Yeah, Fever 88-82. Caitlin Clark 15 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds, rallied for a comeback win. So, and they won they beat them twice, 95-86 also this season. So, do the Mercury have that game circled? Do the Mercury have that game kind of in no man's land because they're on the back-to-back off the break? Like it's a really tough spot to read. I'm probably not going to bet it, but there's the early sharp signals for Friday are Fever against the spread.
Yeah, I'd take the Fever against the spread at least till -3. Anything more than that, I think you want to wait for the game on Thursday and see how that one turns out. Because if the Mercury end up blowing the sky out, you know, and that could easily happen. It could be like 80-50 or something like that. Like we said, the Sky are going to have a lot of problems scoring. Then, you know, Griner might get a lot of rest, and they might be able to come into this game and have them play more minutes.
Right.
Now, the thing is, the Fever probably match up best against the Mercury. The Mercury kind of don't have as good a perimeter defense as you would hope. And Indiana really can take advantage of that, especially Caitlin Clark. One of the things that happened right before the break, by the way, is Caitlin Clark started going off with the assists.
to Aaliyah Boston.
Absolutely.
And she was just putting everything in. It was incredible.
I think one of the reasons this line has moved as much as it has already is because sharps are very aware that the Fever are becoming an item, and they might be able to even sneak into the playoffs by the end of the season, right? Like, that would be fun. So I've been leaning on them before the break, and again, I'm going to lean on them after the break until they prove otherwise. So if you want to grab the -3 now, um, basically what you're doing is you're fading the Mercury on the Thursday game to some extent, which I think is a bad play then because we have the Mercury on
Exactly.
Thursday.
Yep.
So there's no reason for us to be grabbing Indiana right now. The one thing you could look at is potentially taking an under just based on the fact that that line is high. We know that the league is leaning under right now. Does that line drop a bit? Right? Can you get a playback of 2 or 3 points on the under? Now, these two teams also have played a couple of games, and the totals have been right in those mid 170s, low 180s range. So it's probably a pretty sharp line.
And the Fever before the break were playing so fast too, like similar to the way we
Yes.
spoke about the Mercury before. Like these were the two over teams of the W prior to the break.
But
where it's just like,
are the Mercury going to be able to score on the back-to-back against the Fever, pushing the pace like that?
well,
Right.
generally when you push the pace, you can get scored on easier too, right? Because you're just upping the amount of possessions too, so that it
Yes.
creates higher scoring in both senses of the word. So I don't know. That becomes such a hard spot to play in either direction right now without knowing how the Mercury fare in Thursday's game and then who's going to play in that second leg of that road game. Drew, do you have any other bets like Storm Dream, Suns Wings? Do you have any other bets or spots that you're looking towards?
So one of the things I want to look at is sticking with the Fever Mercury game. I might be looking at the Griner under on rebounds here. When she's playing defense, she's close to the basket, and the Fever like to shoot threes. So those rebounds will be coming out
Longer
long.
rebounds,
She
too,
may
yeah.
not have as much energy as has to go after those and to be reaching out. So I'd be looking for her under and maybe an Aaliyah Boston over on rebounds.
Aaliyah Boston's been unbelievable in her last
like the
games.
Fever very clearly really have something to move forward with, and I think that they're ahead of schedule right now.
Is it crazy for me to say that Aaliyah Boston? No, it's crazy. I was going to say, who has a better chance of winning an MVP sooner, her or Caitlin Clark? Because she's she becomes almost an instant 20 and 10 when Caitlin's doing her thing because she just gets so much of the pace, the easy rebounds, the putbacks, the dump offs around the rims. So her stat set becomes super inflated, and she's a great player. I mean, she was like the second overall pick the year before Caitlin Clark went number 1. So I just think that that combination of those two are going to be very good for a long time.
I agree. I'm really excited for it. The other games that I'm seeing, I was fading the Dream and the Wings before the break.
I was going to say, are we playing Storm -6.5? 6.5 is intriguing.
I think it's just high in both cases. With everybody coming back,
Storm are good.
They are good, and the Dream are bad. But
I know.
With the break, both of these games, I kind of looked at and was like, I want to see what these teams look like post break before I'm making any plays on them. Like if the Storm somehow drop to like clearly the sharp money is coming in on the Storm now. I think it opened at -7, it immediately went to -6.5. And now it's climbing. It looks like it's going to climb back to -7. The juice on the -6.5 is up to -114. So you might want to put something there, but again, it's probably just keep an eye on the games, keep an eye on the injuries, who's playing, who's not, and let's have a couple of these move forward after seeing what we've got, right?
Yeah, it might be a money line play for me on the Storm. I mean, paying into minus 290s expensive, but if I do start seeing sevens or 7.5s come back on the board, I might grab a money line in that direction.
I've
then
got a question for
yeah,
you. I know you hate the old parlay, but could you go like a
no,
quarter of a unit, a half unit on both on the money line?
on both what?
So both teams, the Sun and the Storm, are minus 6.5 currently. Just take the money line on both, put them together. Any interest in that?
Negative $400,000 of interest in that.
Okay.
I'd say the worst type of parlay you could do is stacking two money line favorites together, or stacking. Well, first of all, stacking 3 money line favorites, or 4 money line favorites, or 5 money line favorites gets exponentially worse. But no, if I am going to look in the parlay world, it's going to be because, one, you either have some news and information towards something. So there was a time last NBA season where Dorian Finney-Smith's dad was going to be live in person after spending 30 years in jail and like never seeing his son play an NBA game. It was going to be like courtside for a Nets game when they were in complete tank mode in April. And I was like, oh my God, DFS might get 35 minutes. And even the coach, oh my God, what's his name? The guy who was Kevin Ollie was the coach. And he was saying before the game, like, we understand as a team that this is a big deal for Dorian, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, I look at his prop. I'm like 8.5 over, 6.5 rebounds over. Like, this might be a time where you take the multipliers because there's some sort of storyline that encourages something like that to happen. Right. So then I would look towards parlay if there's some like information that makes correlating things for the multiplier actually probably worth it. The second reason that I would do it is if I felt something was priced as inversely correlated, that was actually had a positive correlation. So I would look towards more of the long shots, like Josh Giddey to have 30 plus and Zach LaVine to have 30 plus, right? If they're on the same team and they're both guards, it's unlikely they're going to have 30 plus each. But if I felt in that particular game there was reasons to go in those directions, I would stack them both together. They're inversely correlated against the books, so you get an increased payout on the multiplier. I would never stack 2 money line favorites together from different games. I just wouldn't do it. And in this particular one, I want to avoid the Sun because I'm concerned about that Paris to Dallas type of trip too. Like Dallas is fucking south too, so you're not only going west a ton, you're going south a bunch. So that's a tough one for Alyssa Thomas, the Connecticut Sun, and now they're integrating Mabry after the break too. So Dallas Wings suck. They're not a team that I want to look towards betting, but I don't think I want the Sun either. I'm looking possible Storm here. I don't really have much for Friday that really pops off the board to me yet.
No. Yeah, I again, the Fever, but we're waiting. I do see the Liberty Aces game on Saturday is already up with the Aces minus 2.5 at home. Liberty still on that road trip and coming off of a game 2 days prior. So again, you might want to grab the Aces, I would say.
That's interesting. Yep.
Because especially considering that the Sparks are likely to keep, like we've said, we've put money on the Sparks. So how do we build this going forward, right? Or I've put money on the Sparks. So if the Sparks do cover the spread and that game goes as anticipated, you're going to keep, that's going to be
Aces
closer.
Go to -3, -3.5. Correct.
Absolutely.
I think that's very well. I think that's, a nice way to put the bow on things because that definitely lines up. Thank you, Drew, for joining me today to talk Olympic basketball and the WNBA return to action. Of course, we got this podcast started with a banger of a song from Connor Massara. Go check him out. Go listen to the podcast that I did interviewing him, or the Zodiac GM, which was a fun conversation to talk about basketball through the lens of astrology and zodiac signs and energies and lunar cycles and all that stuff. A lot more coming on The Advantage this summer. Thank you guys for being here. And as always, peace out.